Hello, my friends. Welcome to Lindy's Magpie Reads. I'm glad you're here. I've got 8 books to tell you about that I have finished recently, and I will get to those in just a minute. First, I want to tell you about this fabulous Seaweed tour that I took with my sister who was here visiting. It's the Dakini Wilds Tidal Tour, something like that. Amanda is the expert in seaweeds. She has a license to collect from the wild. We met, she told us all about different kinds of seaweed that are here right on the ocean at Victoria, BC, where I live. Kelps, which are brown seaweeds. We learned about red seaweeds that are around here and green seaweeds. We were able to taste a whole bunch of different kinds, both dried and fresh, and it was a wonderful experience. Not so pleasant was the fact that I had to have some cryotherapy on my nose and also on my ear for some actinic keratosis, some precancerous skin cells. And the dermatologist recommended that come winter I should get laser therapy because this keeps happening, and she said I won't have to keep coming in for treatments. Whew, that doesn't sound fun, but skin cancer is even worse, so whatever I can do to avoid that. Got my sunscreen on, yes. A little while ago, I announced that I am going to be hosting a group read of this book, Praiseworthy by Alexis Wright. And we're going to start on May 1st, and we're going to run for 8 weeks, so it's going to end at the end of June. On the same day that I announced this, Jess over at Stalking Kafka also announced a group read. Hers is starting right away, so April 12th, I believe. I will link information in the description below. So any of the people that I mention and books and all this stuff, links, you'll find that in the description. Anyway, I guess wise minds think alike. If you're ready to start reading it right now, go over and find Jess's an announcement and information. Otherwise, leave me a note in the comments, if you haven't already, to let me know that you want to participate in this. It's going to be on Voxer. Next, I want to talk about shortlist announcements. So many prizes. First off, the Carol Shields Prize. That's books written by women and non-binary folk, and the shortlist has been announced. It includes Code Noir, which I read and loved, Liars, which I am going to be reading in the coming week, Pale Shadows, and that one I'm going to be buddy reading with Gemma, but not till August. Gemma of Gemma Books. River East, River West, that's one that I have been wanting to read, still want to, and All Fours. And I'm like Angelia of Read and Reread. She recently mentioned that Wild Horses couldn't drag her to read this, and I feel the same way about All Fours. I did read a book from the long list that I'm going to be telling you about later on in this video. That's Masquerade. The Stella Prize shortlist, interestingly, are all by women of color. And I have one of those on my shelf that I'm planning to read, probably in this coming week, Michelle de Kretzer's Theory and Practice. I'll let you know how that goes. Then there's the Dublin Literary Award, and their shortlist is just 6 books, down from more than 70. And I'm very pleased to see 3 that I have read, and I thought all of them are great. There's James by Percival Everett. There's there's the North Woods, and also a Canadian novel by Michael Crummy called The Adversary. And yeah, recommend that one too. Then there's the Women's Prize for Nonfiction, and that's my segue to tell you about one of the books that made the shortlist, What the Wild Sea Can Be, The Future of the World's Ocean by Helen Scales. Helen Scales is a marine biologist. She's written a number of books, including The Brilliant Abyss. I read that one a while back, and one of the things that was brought up in her earlier book is deep sea mining, an alarming prospect. She does talk about deep sea mining in here as well. There's some good news, I suppose, some brakes that have been put on to the what previously sounded like full speed ahead. There is so much that I got out of this book. I love reading about science. There's all kinds of amazing facts in here, also discouraging and encouraging news about penguins and orcas and krill and sharks. They're now able to use some new technology to track shark fins and the horrible practice of cutting off fins from live sharks. There's lots of destructive practices with industrial fishing, like long line fishing and bottom trawling. Actually, I talked about bottom trawling with the picture book Shark Girl by Kate Beaton recently. I'll include a link to that picture book in the show notes. There's information about rewilding practices, and that's been happening on land as well. The book Wilding by Isabella Bird covers that subject, and again, I talked about that not too long ago. I'll include a link to that book if you've missed it. It's a great one. There's a story about gannets in here, and the fact that some of them are surviving avian flu, which has been devastating wild populations. But a very interesting thing is the survivors have their blue eyes turn black. So the iris is an indicator that this is a bird that has survived avian flu. They don't know why, but there's interesting stories online about that. Look for a link. There are color photos in here, a few in the middle, and there are also these illustrations that divide chapters and portions in chapters. These are a kind of seaweed, a kelp, and they're holdfast, which I learned about, that seaweed tour I was telling you about. All of the information about oceanic environments, the kelp forests, the seagrass meadows, the coral reefs. Again, good news and bad news on both fronts you'll find in here. I learned that a third of all wild-caught fish that's imported into the USA is illegally caught. But now there is a blockchain technology that's being used to track fish catches, and so hopefully they'll really be able to cut down on that. It is possible to keep ocean life vibrant and diverse and still be able to keep jobs and food for millions of people. She talks about ecological solutions for coastline protection, tidal wetlands, mangrove forests. The biggest takeaway is that our Earth is a water planet. And we all depend on healthy seas for the air we breathe, and rainwater, and a good life, a livable world. And it's possible to have healthy oceans for our future. So I've read 3 now out of the shortlist for the Women's Prize for Nonfiction. Private Revolutions, which is about women's lives in China. And I liked that one a little bit better than What the Wild Sea Can Be. And also Raising Hair. This is currently a group read for People April. This is my favorite so far of all of the nonfiction shortlists that I've read. If you haven't jumped in on that group read, do it or read it on your own. It's really good. Now, as a segue into my next book, I want to show you that there are maps on the end papers of What the Wild Sea Can Be. Very helpful, actually, what she's talking about in here. She also talks about the ancient seas, so where the ocean was and ocean life prior to humankind, and trilobites are a big factor. Wow. Now in this next book, it's a work of science fiction, Simon Stålenhag's Tales from the Loop. He's a Swedish author. This was translated by Martin Dunelind. And there are maps. This is Sweden. You see that the location is pretty much where Stockholm is. But we're going to and it is it's an art book or a picture book, but for adults or all ages, with text and these gorgeous illustrations that are done with digital art. And they have the Swedish countryside. There's often children and machines like giant transformer machines, and also trilobites, dinosaurs. The stories are as if it's a man looking back on his childhood in the 80s in this area of Sweden, where a government project called The Loop, a particle accelerator that was built underground, so I guess much like the one at CERN in Switzerland, which I've been to, very interesting, the Large Hadron Collider. Anyway, The Loop makes for a kind of eerie or uncanny combination of childhood nostalgia with science fiction. If you like Sean Tan's Tales from Suburbia, this kind of has a similar feel. I will read just one section here. The invasive species. There was talk of prehistoric monsters in the woods. Eddies swirled in space-time, portals between our time and the past, in the wake of cosmic energies. A bridge had been created, allowing creatures from another time to travel to our world. Someone had found an empty lot covered in desert sand. A shoal of trilobites lay twitching on the roof of the school gymnasium. So I am going to count that as participating in Picture This, which is a picture book readathon that is hosted by Jack of Spread Book Joy and Shelley of Shellyish. I've also got a couple of children's picture books to tell you about. including this one, Paradise Sands by Levi Pinfold, who's born in the UK, now lives in Australia. I've previously talked about his book that he illustrated that was written by David Almond, The Dam, and a while back I read his book Black Dog, which is also excellent. This one has the feel of a fairy tale, something like the Brothers Grimm Tale About the Swans, or Hans Christian Andersen's version of The Wild Swans. But it's also like a mashup with, the Eagles song, Hotel California, and maybe Susanna Clarke's book, Piranesi. His art is like high realism, but also fantasy. So there was this eerie kind of surrealist twist. Also reminds me of Chris Van Allsburg's artwork, if you're familiar with that. It's an eerie story for older children, teens, and adults. April is Poetry Month, so this next book combines both because it is a poem written by Ada Limón, who is the Poet Laureate of the United States since 2022, and the art is by the Czech-American artist Peter Sis, who has several times been honored with a Caldecott Award. This poem was written in honor of the Europa Clipper, which was launched in October of 2024. And it is going to bring back information about Jupiter's moon, Europa. But the author says, even though this poem was meant to travel outward into space, I wrote it to celebrate and honor the wonders of our own precious planet. In Praise of Mystery, a poem for Europa. Arching under the night sky, inky with black expansiveness, we point to the planets we know. We pin quick wishes on stars. From Earth, we read the sky as if it is an unerring book of the universe, expert and evident. Still, there are mysteries below our sky, the whale song, the songbird singing its call in the bough of a wind-shaken tree. We are creatures of constant awe, curious at beauty, at leaf and blossom, at grief and pleasure, sun and shadow. And it is not darkness that unites us, not the cold distance of space, but the offering of water, each drop of rain, each rivulet, each pulse, each vein. O second moon, we too are made of water, of vast and beckoning seas. We too are made of wonders, of great and ordinary loves, of small invisible worlds, of a need to call out through the dark. Next, I've got 2 audiobooks, and both are about people. So I'm having fun participating in People April, which is hosted by Roz of Scallydandling About the Books, Elizabeth of Bouquins and Books, and Brian of Bookish. This is to read nonfiction about people. So, starting with a memoir, it's Lifeform by Jenny Slate. The audiobook is read by the author and a few other people, 3 other people, including George Saunders. And these are short, funny essays about her life, starting with being single and then getting married and being pregnant, having a life form inside of her, and then being a mother. A lot of it has to do with pregnancy. There were times when I found I was getting a little annoyed with the quirkiness of Jenny Slate, but I had really enjoyed one of her previous books, Little Weirds. I think that one came out in 2020. So I realized that it was just that I was having too much at one time. I just needed to space it out a little. Sometimes it's all about mood when you're reading something. She does have a quote from Leonora Carrington's The Hearing Trumpet, which has been on my TBR for quite a while. This made me move it up higher on my TBR. Let me know if you've read that one. Here's an example of her writing style. One afternoon, I was wasting time on the computer looking at old sweatshirts for sale. I do not tolerate junk, but I do love treasures. Even the way that when she's talking about talons, she calls them feet teeth, which, she has a really interesting ways of putting words together, expressing herself. And overall, yes, I would recommend Lifeform. So next up is a bunch of biographies. It's called Custodians of Wonder, Ancient Customs, Profound Traditions, and the Last People Keeping Them Alive. So this is, I guess, in the realm of sociology. It's by Eliot Stein, who writes for the BBC and National Geographic, I think. The audiobook is read by Danny Hughes, and there are so many interesting traditions that are close to vanishing, like the building of a grass suspension bridge in Peru, and the man that has the knowledge for that. I had to go online and find out more. I'll include a link. And I did this for many of the chapters in here. There's a woman in a remote Sardinian village. This is a place where Sardo is still spoken, which is a language most closely related to Latin. And she, and I think 3 other people, make this kind of pasta. That's the threads of God, a very thin pasta, the rarest pasta in the world. There's a fellow who makes a traditional soy sauce in Japan. There's the last night watchman in Sweden. He's in a tower watching for fire in his little town. And that night watchman is also mentioned in Tales from the Loop, an inspiration for one of the little stories in here. There's a picture that goes with it. So this fellow sounds a horn every 15 minutes between midnight and 4 a.m. in the town. And people say that it helps them sleep. Because they know everything is safe. I guess it's all a matter of getting used to things. But there's always more general information that Eliot Stein includes. So the whole practice of fire wardens in Sweden and how these men became Europe's first wind musicians. So cool. And another instrument that's talked about in here is the balafon from Mali and that area. And he's talking about a particular person who's the 27th generation of griots in his family, plays the balafon. Musicologists say that Mali is the birthplace of the blues. There's the superstar Ali Farka Touré, who has since died, but I have heard his son, Vur Fakature, play at the folk festival in Edmonton. The music that these men play sounds just like John Lee Hooker. They say West African sounds have been mixed and morphed into jazz, soul, rock and roll, funk, and hip hop. And Eliot Stein was able to see the very first balafon, apparently. It was built in the 12th century, and it is still being preserved in this little village in Mali. And this is my segue into the next book that I want to tell you about. It's a novel, Masquerade, by O O Sangoyomi. Sangoyomi is a Nigerian-American. This is her debut novel. It's got a very gorgeous cover. And I became aware of this because of the Carol Shields Prize. So a great way to discover books. So this is a kind of reimagined 15th century West Africa. The Oyo Empire, which was a Yoruba empire. The central character is Ododo, and she is a blacksmith. Her single mother is a blacksmith, and it's these women, that's their trade. It's a rags to riches story. She has a short conversation with someone that she thinks is a beggar. Turns out he's a king. He's fallen in love with her and has her stolen and whisked away to his kingdom. So there was a lot about this in the early part where I thought, this book is not for me. This is a romance. I don't really like romance. I was wrong about it being historical romance, by the way. I actually really loved the ending. But also, Sangoyomi's writing style is really not to my taste, and sometimes it takes a lot for me to overcome reading a book that isn't to my taste. However, I did, and I'm really glad that I did. Maybe I'll give you the examples of the writing style, and then I'll tell you why I like this book anyway. This kind of writing might really work for you, and that's why I want to give you the examples. My palanquin was set down, and a woman appeared before me as though she had materialized from the soft light of dawn. Her skin shone like liquefied sunlight that had been simmered with honey. She wore the same cotton dress as me and the other women, but on her tall, willowy frame, the simple dress was transformed into a bold fashion statement. And one more little bit. He waged wars, ravaged entire villages, and killed countless people. And I committed an act equally as violent. I loved him. Yeah, it takes a lot for me to get past sentences like that. However, Ododo, she is a great character. She's a teen when she's taken, and she's naive, but she is intelligent, and she really changes a lot through the book. Many things happen to her. She's got many challenges to overcome. She becomes a very powerful woman. I also liked the setting very much. It felt very real to me. I liked how woman-focused this novel is. And also, there is labor activism going on. So I won't tell you more about that, only that that was enough to be an extra hook for me in this novel. Let me know if you've read it or if what I've said about it makes you want to read it. Oh yeah, and there's maps on the end papers of this book as well. And in the flap, the publisher's information says it's loosely based on the myth of Persephone. I would say mostly just the very early part could be compared to Persephone. But this next book, so this is my last book to tell you about the best of the bunch. Oh man, I loved it so much. It's called The Death of Persephone, A Murder, and it's by the poet Yvonne Blomer, who was the poet laureate here in Victoria. This is gripping. There are murders. Young women are being murdered. There's a detective inspector who is responding to these cases. There's a young woman, Stephanie, who's the central character at the core of the story. She's being raised by her Uncle H. Since she was a girl, we don't know what happened to her mother. So many ties to the various retellings of Persephone and also to contemporary dangers that women face, and specifically Indigenous women here in Canada. The poem Corridor, here's a part of it. The maiden taken is not just in our imagination, walking home this highway of a corridor of vanished beings, violence, an erasure of earth and what is fertile, an erasure of women and deep knowledge. Language the tongue cannot curl to, yet still tongues do. Persephone, maiden taken, is in everything. Iconic girl, expected violence, history on repeat, legend, myth, religion. We are breaking the code. She is make-believe. She is real. Smack down, she rises. Human, enduring. In the myth of Persephone, Persephone was picking Narcissus as when Hades stole her away to the underworld. And that's another tie in Ododo and the daffodils, which she makes out of metal, and you can see them here. Leonora Carrington is also mentioned in here. What are the chances? 2 different books in the same week. I love all these ties, just the serendipity of books speaking to each other, which reminds me, there was another thing in Masquerade early on that had to do with a myth connected to swallowing the sacred Yoruba bean. And I recently read Empusium by Olga Tokarczuk, and there's a scene in there that has to do with swallowing a sacred bean. So it's fun. Reading brings me so much joy, and I hope it's the same for you. Thank you so very much for listening, for watching. I really appreciate hearing from you, so please do say hello in the comments. Let me know what you're reading. And until the next time, happy reading, everybody. Bye for now.